Okay, welcome back, everyone. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Joanne Kamens, the Executive Director of AdGen. She received her PhD in genetics from Harvard Medical School, following which she worked in multiple pharma and biotech companies. Um, Joanne has also been involved in career advising for scientists. She also serves on many nonprofit boards and is an advocate of diversity and equity in science. She has been raising awareness among women scientists since 1988, which inspired her to also initiate the current Boston chapter of the Association for Women in Science. Today, in her talk, she will share her career path with a focus on networking, transitions, and work-life balance along the way. I hope her experiences shall help all of us to broaden our horizons and improve our career navigation tactics. I now welcome Joanne on the virtual stage and request her to enlighten our audience with her talk. Thank you. And now I'll stop my microphone.
Thanks to Boji. Thanks to everyone from Horizons Conference for inviting me to speak to you. Now that I'm not able to travel in real life, I was supposed to be there in person. So, congratulations on bringing the conference online so that we could all benefit. So, I'll do my best to keep an eye on the questions, but I'm going to try and get through my slides pretty quickly so that there's time at the end for questions as well. So this is a description of my career path so far. I'm not not necessarily done yet, although I'm very happy here at Agene now. And I hope that you will have questions and learn a little bit from my career path, as you should from anyone's career path that is different than yours. So, what I find when I work with scientists is they think they're extremely logical in making decisions. We have a hypothesis, we test it, we reevaluate the hypothesis, we integrate the data, very logical. But when it comes to making career decisions, it's almost like scientists just throw this whole model out the window and just kind of like, yeah, that might be a good idea for me. Everybody else is doing it. I should do it the same way. Which seems kind of crazy to me. Like, I really want to be here today to get you to use your scientific skills to apply those to making decisions about your career and about your career training paths as well. So you have to do it. I wish that all of your programs had fantastic career development, enrichment, and core curriculum for diverse careers. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. We're certainly not there in the United States. I don't. I assume that where you are, it's completely not there. So it's really about you going to get the information you need, because you won't always get it from the faculty, your PIs, your mentors in your programs. But fortunately, there are a lot of resources available. So one of the other reasons why I do these talks is it really frustrates me when I hear this dialogue from academia, and these are quotes from journals in our fields. Nature Jobs. It took a lot for Virginia to set aside the feeling that she was wasting her PhD to go work for a pharma company and do drug discovery. Scientists decide to leave. They don't leave, they're done with their training. They go to find jobs. It is not leaving science. Quit the lab. They don't quit the lab, they complete their training, and scientists can still benefit. So, scientist is not a thing you do, it's something that you are. You bring that viewpoint and that training to any career, anything that you do, the millions of different things that you can do. I don't like the dialogue the other way either, that scientists can be stuck in academia. We need an academic training system to train the next generation, and basic research is the cornerstone of discovery and innovation. So I'm not saying you should leave academia. I'm just saying you should only stay in academia if that is the right choice for you. In addition, there are not enough jobs for all of you to stay in academia. That dark blue line is cumulative PhDs awarded in the United States, and the orange line is the number of faculty, tenure track faculty positions that are available. I want you to be scientists. We need more scientists, for heaven's sakes. We need you in policy and government. We need you everywhere. But doesn't mean that you should all assume you're going to have an academic tenure track career, nor should you. It's not the right thing for everyone. It takes a very specific profile for a person that can succeed in that type of career choice. So how did I get here? I'm going to talk about these transition arrows from 4 different lenses, if you will. And the first one is about meeting people. So How did I meet people? Well, I did networking, which everyone hates the term networking. So throw it away and use the term. I built relationships with people. I met people. I stayed in touch with them. I was interested in different types of science and different types of careers. I love this survey. 1,000 scientists say that 52% of them found their jobs through knowing someone. And then 8% said recruiter, conference, alumni network, serendipity. That's probably networking too. The LinkedIn networking website. Pretty much everybody finds their jobs because they know somebody. Not everybody, but let's say 85 to 90%. You can still send your resume in. This little brown pie slice is just sending your resume into an online ad for a job. But the vast majority of people get their jobs from referrals, meaning someone recommends them. An agency, meaning a headhunter or a recruiter. A lot of scientists with PhDs, even early career, find their jobs through recruiters. Or direct contact, which means that the person that hires you actually knows you. And they're like, hey, wait a minute, we have an opening that would be good for you. So that's how people primarily get jobs. Why is this? Well, look at hiring managers. 40% of hires came from referrals in this particular survey. Only 7% of the applications were from people who were referred. So I'm sure you can see as scientists that if 40% of the people get jobs from 7% of the applications, you can see how important hiring managers take referrals. So why is that, right? Well, the fact is that you can get a whole bunch of resumes on your desk and you can interview someone like I did once a few years ago when I was back in pharma. Hire this technician, great resume, nice phone call. 2 weeks later, I have to call security to escort him out because he's pulled a knife on someone in the lab who used his pipette. Boy, do I wish I had a referral for someone that knew him longer so we would know about this anger management problem, right? So when you have a referral as a hiring manager, if someone says to you, hey, I know Joanne, she talks a lot, but she's good at the bench, she's probably worth interviewing, your resume just goes to the top of the pile. You get you the job, but the referral gets you the interview and gets you in the door. And that's what one of the why referrals are so important. It's such a comfort zone for people who are hiring. So how did I get my jobs? Referrals and direct contacts, all three of them. And the last two jobs I've worked at in biotech at RXI or at Addgene were never advertised publicly. So if I didn't have connections to people and be talking with people about my job search, those I would never have known about those jobs. They weren't even in the online. They weren't advertised at all. So some of the best jobs are actually never advertised, and it's kind of an important thing to know. And that's another reason why you want to be meeting different types of people and maintaining relationships and growing them over the years. So I know you hate networking. Everyone hates networking, but really it just means doing stuff. So I don't network like, oh, hey, I'd like to meet you, you strange person, and we should talk. I do stuff. Most of my network comes from my work doing diversity work through the Association for Women in Science for decades now. I've been doing that work, meeting people who are passionate about the same kinds of things I was passionate about in science. Be meeting people at conferences. Of course, that's also a fantastic way to develop relationships. I've had a rule for many years to have lunch with another human twice a week. Now that I'm an executive director, head of a company, I have coffee, or even if it's video coffee, with people, 10 times a week, maybe. But back when I was in the lab, I had two little kids. I just wanted to put my head on my desk and sleep during lunch. I would go to the lunchroom and have lunch with someone. These kinds of metrics for are you meeting people, for people who are very busy, can be a really good way. Set yourself goals and metrics for, am I getting out there? Am I staying in touch with people? Am I making new relationships? And we used to do that at Abbott, I would have lunch with people I knew, or people maybe I didn't know very well and wanted to know better and hear more about their career path. It's a great thing to do in a large company. There's so many different jobs, you can't possibly know about them all. So it's a good way to meet people in your own company, not to mention meeting people who are at other companies. Go to a conference. All the people there are there for the same reason you are. Sit down next to someone. Don't leave an empty seat. Don't take your phone out right away. When I do this, I'm going to talk about networking later, and I would look forward to having you join that session as well. We'll talk a lot more about this issue of how to interact with people in a welcoming way, even if you are introverted or extroverted. So I am married to a 100% introvert, and he is extremely successful. He has hundreds of people under him. He's a VP at a big company. Just because you're introverted doesn't mean that you don't know how to build relationships. Just slightly different tactics that people use. Okay, so if you remember four things about networking, not coming to my talk later where I will give you more detail on this. Um, you can't wait. You have to do it now because if you wait till you need a job, then you're desperate and people are a little scared of you when you're networking because they sense your desperation. So you want to meet people all the time before you need them. If something feels creepy, don't do it. I get asked these strange questions all the time about should I do this? Should I do that? If your gut tells you that it feels like you're stalking the person, then you probably are. Make sure that you're interesting and impressionable and interested in other people. You can't network and be looking over people's shoulders or like bored or sleeping in the corner munching on chips. You know, you have to engage. It's a little tiring, but you have to engage. And you don't have to network with people you don't like. So, again, I'll talk much more about this later today. All right, so let's do our first poll. I'm going to start the poll. So I'm interested to know if you guys have thought about what kinds of careers you're taking. And, you know, again, when I'm saying don't wait, that means that you don't really know where you're going to go. But I would love you to be meeting people now, just in case you have the opportunity later to take advantage of those relationships. And by the way, networking is great for academia as well. Don't think that networking is not important. How do people get grants? How do they get co authors? How do they get their papers reviewed positively? They know people. How do they get promoted? How do they get money? That's all through knowing people. So, this skill of building relationships is important for academia and important for non academia as well. Okay, so people are taking the poll. It looks like about, I don't know how many people, 45% of people are looking at non academic positions, about 20% academic tenure track. You're getting a little closer to the number of jobs, 18% academic track. Only about 15% of you will have an opportunity at an academic tenure track job, just so you know. 20% now saying, okay. I'm going to leave that open for a second. We'll come back. At least most of you are thinking about it. I only have 2% of people who aren't thinking about what kind of career position they're going to take. So that is fantastic. That's all I'm really asking is that you start doing some investigating now because you can't wait until year 6 of your grad school or postdoc to make those decisions. So another thing that happens pretty frequently to scientists is they are given opportunities and they look at job descriptions and they're like, oh, I can't do that thing, right? So we all have this imposter syndrome. Okay, great. So our Q says that about 40% of you are looking at non-academic positions, 35% of you aren't sure, 23% are looking at academic tenure track. So that's a little bit high for the actual number of jobs, just saying. So probably more of you should be considering other options as well. Okay, great. Oops, let's see. Okay, let me close that one. Okay, great. All right, so the other thing is this imposter syndrome issue. And I see a lot of scientists saying, oh, I'm not trained to do that. I'm not trained to do this. So my poll question is, do you have it sometimes? And I don't care if you're a woman or a man, everybody gets imposter syndrome. We always see these articles about women having imposter syndrome. Men are just quieter about it as far as I'm concerned. They have it too. So imposter syndrome is when you just think, I can't do that thing. It's too hard. I can't be as smart as that person, or I can't gain that skill, which is sad because you are a scientist. Literally, the thing you are best at is learning stuff. That's what your whole training is about learning stuff. So when I was given the opportunity to be the head of Adgene, my first thought was imposter syndrome. I can't run a company. I'm a scientist. How am I going to do that? Right? So that was 20 years into my career, past my academic training. So imposter syndrome never stops. You have to wrestle with it and say to yourself, but I can do this thing. I'm going to try. And that's what I mean by raising your hand. So I'm just going to tell you a couple things about Adgene so you understand where I'm working now, because I'm going to talk a little bit about careers here. Adgene is a repository that takes research materials, primarily plasmids, viral vectors, and other types of DNA-based materials from published papers or useful tools that scientists make. They're deposited, and we distribute them around the world. We're pretty big now. When I got to Adgene, we had 200 items a day, and now we have 800 items a day. So I think the fact that I thought I couldn't run a company is probably not true. Things are going well. We hit about 1.4 million distributions in total. Thousands and thousands of scientists are interested in this open science model. So what does Adgene do? I think you guys know, hopefully, we have plasmids. We have a viral vector service where we make prepared viral vectors, lots of CRISPR materials, neuroscience, stem cells, almost every organism possible. We have great, great resources. I thought you might be interested in what's going on for Agene in Europe. So this is where plasmids are distributed. We just distributed to our 101st country, and you can see how many European countries are in the top 24. Most requesting countries, and this is just in the last 30 days. So these order slightly varies, and it might also vary depending on because of the coronavirus has shut different companies down, different countries down at different times, but it gives you an idea for where we are. Um, of course, open science for better reproducibility. I won't go into any details, but really, if you're writing papers, or I would love you to bring the routine deposit of published plasmids to your labs. There's so many great reasons to deposit. I don't want to take too much time to talk about it today, but my heart is really in this. I didn't know that when I took this job. That's one reason why I talk about it a little bit here is I didn't really realize how much it would mean to me to be running something so important and contributing in such a meaningful way. And if I had been too afraid to take this risk and apply for the job at Agene, I never would have had this opportunity. So I'm going to talk a little bit about educational resources in the rest of my talk because I only am speaking for a few minutes today. This cannot be the last career talk you do. It must be the first. So there's so much career stuff and so much science resources on the Agene website. So I urge you to partake of those. So we're also doing a lot of COVID-19 support. And let's talk about PhD roles at Agene. So talk about all the different things you can do. These are the things that PhD scientists do at Agene, and only one of them is bench work. None of them are academia or even pharma, the industry that you might think. And they're all interesting and all super cool, and the Agenes are super happy. Okay, so so that's my first lens was building relationships, and my second lens was professional development. So there were so many times when I said, I'm not qualified to learn about supply chain, but that was a thing you could learn when you worked in a big pharma company that made a big drug like Humira. And so I learned about it, right? There's so many things you can learn about. Whenever I had opportunities to do professional development, I took those opportunities. And only in that way would I be prepared for different roles later on in my career. Professional development is not a soft skill. It is a plus skill. It is something that you absolutely need. You need it for academia. You need it for non-academia. It doesn't matter. So there's tons of things that you can work on during your training that are going to apply very well to your academic career as well. So, okay. There's one question. Okay, I'm going to come back to the questions at the end. So we'll see how they get upvoted. So what can you do to get ready? You can develop your technical knowledge. You can work on communication. Super important. I can get in front of an audience and speak this way, or in front of a computer and speak this way because I do it all the time. I do it like once or twice a week. Practice makes speaking better, even if you are quiet and shy. Collaboration and teamwork. I will give you a heads up. People outside of academia believe that one of the most difficult skills to develop is teamwork. And if you can demonstrate on your resume that you have worked with a team or a group, including an extracurriculars, not necessarily just lab work, that is a big plus on your resume. And if we have time during the questions, then I can explain why that is. What can I do to get ready? Management and leadership. When you are been in school for a long time, if you do a postdoc, you are a pretty experienced person in the workforce. When you get outside of academia, and if you are running a lab, you are expected to manage people. And so learning about management while you are doing your training, because it is a skill, it's not a natural thing. Learning about management is an incredible key part of will benefit you for any career that you have. If more of our PIs took more time studying management while they were training, they would be running more successful labs. I firmly believe that. Okay, so my third lens is about diversity. I spent an enormous amount of time not realizing how difficult my path was and how blessed I was to have advisors and people support me during my training as people suffered terribly from diversity. I'm not even going to go into the benefits of diversity. That's all over the world right now. It is absolutely a benefit. But the problem is that even those of us that believe that diversity is important don't realize and take ownership of our own biases. We all have implicit biases. And this is an area that I've been working on for many years. For example, the phrase postdoctoral fellow. Fellow is a boy word. It means young man in English, right? If we could all be postdoctoral scholars or postdoctoral scientists, it would take away just one tinge of the assumption that those roles are held by men. So, and diversity is not just about women, but unfortunately, harassment is a major issue in science. I have an unfortunate number of stories of women who have come to me and talked about the horrible things that have happened actually to them in science. Um, I'm going to start polling just to see. This is an anonymous poll. Have you experienced harassment or bias that has affected your ability to do science? I know a few white males that have not, but I don't know any women who have not. And I don't know anyone who is a person of color or LGBTQ or perhaps has a disability. None of those people have actually have never experienced any bias. Now, you may think you haven't, but probably if you are in any of those underrepresented groups, and underappreciated groups, I would say, you probably have, and you don't even realize it because people are biased. So harassment like this guy who like actually probably made hundreds of women leave cosmology because of his incredible years of harassment, and thousands of scientists were complicit with him. He's lost his job. He finally, after many years, was not able to do that anymore. But there's this kind of harassment, which is just the mood of harassment, where a major leader in science says, you fall in love with women, they fall in love with you, and then you criticize them and they cry. That's why you can't have co-ed laboratories. It's pretty sad, right? This guy has a lab. He went to a neuroscience conference, put on his Facebook page how he thought all the women in neuroscience were unattractive. His lab people, many of whom were women, were friends with him. We have to start voting with our feet. Until recently, this guy's lab still had 50% women. Come on, when you Google him, this is like the second thing that comes up this episode because it was huge on social media. So this overt kind of harassment and stupid language is not really the problem. The problem is that we have these biases that affect our ability to treat people equally. And so that's really a huge problem. And it's something that I've worked on for many years. I've made many great contacts and met other people passionate about this topic. If you are going to run a lab, be in a lab, or be in the workplace, you must be aware of these issues. And in this year, for sure, this has come to the forefront in the United States and even over the world. Our general issues in the world with systemic racism, systemic sexism, homophobia, disability blindness, not seeing people who are disabled and appreciate them. So, these things are ever present in every job that you will have, and you have to be conscious of it. And if you are a nested minority, meaning like a Black woman, you are even more trouble because your pay is affected, your promotion is affected, everything is higher for people like that. So I've done a lot of diversity work over the years, continue to do it. You can look for some of my content online and certainly in blogs. And this is some very rewarding work that I do and work that I'm proud of because hopefully making a difference. And I love to talk about how AdGene is super diverse and super working hard to work on our biases and our systems so that we are not perpetuating these problems. Finally, the last lens is work-life balance. And I don't have time to go into this in detail. You can read my blog on my 10 commandments of negotiating work and life. You have to have life, right? I had a baby in grad school. I had a second baby my first year working in pharma. I have parents who are starting to be more demanding. I never work on Saturday because I keep a strict Sabbath. So I only ever work 6 days a week. So there's no way I can do that mythical 80-hour work week. And I've been very successful in progressing successfully through my career and being productive. You need life, you need exercise. You all know how much you need exercise. You have to make time for some of those things. Don't choose labs that are unreasonable because that's really my take-home message here is be thoughtful about where you work and where you go. You can choose who your mentors are. Don't choose the mentors who are unreasonable about what they're saying about work-life negotiation, about mentoring, about support of their students, about post-academic training, about outside academia careers. You want to look for mentors and people during your training that support all those diverse paths. How do you want to be? You want to be happy at work. You want to dance a little bit sometimes. Science is hard. Sometimes it's boring, but a lot of times when you're doing science, everything falls into place. So anyway, I'm happy to take questions, and I thank you again for inviting me. And this is the Agene team saying we're here to help. And I'm going to take a look at the question section now. And Debojit's going to tell me which questions he wants to answer. So thanks very much, everybody.
So thank you very much for the amazing talk. It was great to hear from you about how we can navigate through our careers and also about Adjin. So I'll go through the questions. We have quite a few questions. I'll go through the ones which are most popular.
Okay.
So Maya asks, how to differentiate between the imposter syndrome and something you legitimately can't do and will never be successful in.
Yeah, I don't think you always know. Like when I was in biotech, I had to do a lot of reading of legal stuff and like writing patents. I was terrible at that. And so, I was never going to go into a tech transfer career. It was just never going to be something I was good at, right? But thinking about it, being intuitive and doing some early tasks where I really saw that this was not in my wheelhouse, if I didn't try, I would never know. And of course, there's things you're just not interested in. Like I'm there's just parts of the work I'm just not as interested in. So I've really pursued my talent for the things that I'm good at and that I'm interested in. And then one of the great things about being more senior at a company is you hire people to do the other things and they like their work. So I think part of the trick is really early on trying things out and following the paths. So I'm not saying that there isn't other paths you could take. I'm just saying don't shut any doors. Follow the paths where you're successful and just keep going on that path, right? I am good at business development, right? And that was something that I didn't really find out till somewhat later in my career by having an opportunity to try it out. It's a super important career for running a company. So you just don't always know.
Okay. So the next question is from Julio. He asks, what is the background required for a job applicant in Adjin?
Yeah, so we have all different levels, undergrad, scientists, masters, PhDs, and people who are not scientists at all because we're a whole company. We have people in our office, we have legal staff, we have accounting staff, we have we have people who are experts at operations and supply chain and shipping. But if you're talking about the science background, you probably have to know a lot about plasmids. I would recommend that because that's what we do here. We're actually hiring someone to run our DNA facility right now, doing a PhD scientist to really support all of the projects at Agene with high throughput and medium throughput and large scale DNA preparation. That's a super great job. If you're interested in working at Agene, we're looking for someone for that. Um, we hire people who are right out of school who need to learn better lab techniques, and we train them. But what we really look for are people who have initiative, who are interested in the open science mission, and who are good at communicating and collaboration because Agene is extremely collaborative. So if you're joining our marketing and communications team, we want to see that you have written a blog, been on Twitter, have some experience with writing. It'll be specific for the role, but we love those extracurriculars because they show that you've pursued other things that you're interested in. Hopefully that answers your question. Check out our careers page.
Okay. So you know what to do if you want to apply to Adjin.
Yeah.
So the next question is actually from me. I have seen that you have transitioned from multiple pharma and biotech companies, and now you are finally in Adjin for quite some time. I'm interested to know what factors have steered your career trajectory through the different companies.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I stayed in pharma for 15 years. So my first job I took because I had a baby. I needed money. I did not do a postdoc. My advisor had connections in pharma and biotech was a very nascent industry then. It was early years for biotech, so it was a pretty new thing. And he introduced me to people through his network that he knew, and I had 3 interviews, one offer, took the job, and stayed there for 15 years. Why did I stay? Because I did all kinds of interesting things there. Pharma research is fun, it's fast, it's funded, exciting. I was learning new things all the time. I changed therapeutic areas a couple times. I went from biologics to small molecules. I just learned so much there. And so as long as I was learning and taking on new roles and growing, I really enjoyed it. After 15 years, there was a bit of a ceiling there for women, for sure. And also just when you've been somewhere 15 years, it's a good time to make a move, actually, because you are very marketable. You have a lot of experience and you're going to get paid more probably if you switch jobs. And also, I just needed something new. As I started to look, I had lunch with a friend who was starting a biotech with the Nobel Prize winner for RNAi with Craig Mello. And I had done RNAi while I was in pharma. Didn't know how I loved it. It's cool technology. I was there from the first paper doing stuff. And he said, "Hey, we're looking for a director of research. Are you interested in coming to work with us?" I was like, "Yes, yes, I am." And a month later, I took that job. So, what was the question was like, what steered me? Opportunity, interest, and timing, I would say. But I was ready to walk through that door. When the door opened, I was ready to quit and move and go. So maybe that's my mental state. I was ready. I got laid off from that job because that happens in biotech. The company was not acquired. And so I had to look for a job. And that's when the job at Agene was being advertised. Um, it was not advertised. I knew about it through connections only. And I really have done nonprofit work my whole life. I was super excited to get paid to do nonprofit work. And they were looking for someone who knew a lot about plasmids, which is my whole job at Abbott was basically running a plasmid core, one of my main functions. I made hundreds and hundreds of plasmids over the years, knew a lot about molecular biology. Someone who had managed large groups, which I had done by then, and who knew enough to, was good at science communication and interested in the people part of the work, which basically was describing me. So the opportunity was fantastic. And there I just had to be brave enough to say, I could be a CEO. Yeah, no problem. I could do that. I needed a job, a great opportunity. It wasn't the job I was looking for, but it certainly was a great thing for me to explore and try. And so, what's guided me is opportunities and timing, I would say.
Okay. Uh, Currently, we're running a little out of time. There
Okay,
are still a lot of questions to be answered, but I would recommend that we'll move on to the speed dating session because it's also a nice opportunity for the participants to come on stage and then they can talk to you face to face and ask you questions. So
great.
I think it's great. It's nice to just end this session here and then we start the speed dating right away. So,
Okay,
yeah.
great. Thank you.
There are so many.